introduction. I'm Rachel. I'm a level 7 apprentice at the University of Nottingham. So for those of you that don't know what the apprenticeship is, I'm essentially doing my master's, doing my part 2, and I'm just starting my 3rd year. So it's sort of like my 5th year project. And yeah, so it's called the Multi-Generational City. It's kind of supposed to be responding to a number of different things happening in society today, be that the aging population, how do we sort of solve that? Then there's also things to do with, in the city, people feeling isolated, a lot of mental health I suppose, problems, and how do we, I suppose, connect communities, and then also the sort of finances of affordable homes and the cost of living. So it's not going to solve all of them, but it's supposed to sort of, I guess, give an example of how we can build better and live better. So the site itself is actually located in London. It's just north of the River Thames in the borough of Islington. So quite a wealthy borough in the most part, and one that lacks a lot of affordable homes. Sort of beginning the project, I had a look at sort of what the local needs actually were, and it was quite evident by 2 sort of things, looking at the London plan to begin with, that there was a clear driver for building strong, inclusive communities, and something that I suppose is lacking in a lot of cities, but particularly big cities like London. So yeah, they had sort of quotes around creating cities for all people, children, young people, old people, disabled people, and then also people with children. And yeah, having a city that everyone can enjoy confidently, independently, and avoiding segregation. And then on the other side, you've got the London Borough Council, and it's probably no surprise that they've got huge waiting lists for accessing social housing, and people in the greatest need are facing severe delays. So I kind of boiled that down in a way, and had a look into some, I suppose, different housing models and how we might be able to respond to some of those issues. And it was quite apparent that multi-generational housing was something that could possibly provide a lot of answers, and something that isn't often done. So along the bottom, we've got benefits that the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors suggest you can get from multi-generational housing. So enhanced relationships across generations, convenient care for adults and children, creation of support bubbles, which I think since COVID we all know the importance of support bubbles now. Mental and physical health benefits, and then also financial benefits, because I think a lot of these schemes are often brought up in a way of cooperatives. So moving on, I kind of had a little look into HomeShare UK, which is a charity which is actually something a little bit personal because my grandma used it herself. And for those of you that don't know, they essentially partner householders up with home sharers. Generally, it's an elderly person, normally with a spare room in their house. And the home sharer is generally someone younger who's gets cheap rent, perhaps even free, and in return, they give a certain level of agreed support. So it might just be doing the shopping, helping around the house. And these are just a couple of quotes taken from the HomeShare website. which are essentially them saying how much they have found it a positive experience. So the project itself was sort of taking a lot of what that charity was doing and expanding it beyond just the elderly and a single beneficiary. And it was sort of expanding that to young families that might need additional care. So there were a number of things that I was trying to get at, but these are the project principles. So creating new forms of living for London or any city really. Creating social synergies to ignite communities, so reaching out beyond just the immediate building and thinking how can that benefit people in the surrounding area. And then also trying to create sustainable buildings, so looking at low operational energy, low embodied carbon, and bringing biodiversity to the area as well. I'm not going to go through all of this, but essentially this was just mapping out what each person might need when designing for multi-generational typologies. You're essentially designing for everyone, and everyone's got a lot of different requirements. So that was quite important to the project. This is a map of who's benefiting from who, and it's, I guess, a little ecosystem. So you've got essentially young adults being caregivers, so they're receiving financial benefits, be that subsidised rent from working parents or senior adults. And then part of the scheme was that there was an intergenerational daycare centre, which the local community were invited to come and be a part of, so they benefited from that as well. This is the site. So it's in quite a dense urban area, and it was a very tall building, so that was actually something that I had to deal with, which was quite difficult. So the massing was probably the most difficult part of the scheme, making sure that we got enough light into the north side of the building as well. This is kind of breakdown of all the different components of the building, and you can see that intergenerational daycare at the bottom, which was, I guess, rather than dividing the spaces up into the old people and the young people, it was divided by activity level. So you'd have a really messy, playful area where the older people might want to play with the kids or do their own games, and then you have like a quiet area where children might want to read. And the heart of all of that was the community cafe at the centre. And then in the blue areas at the top, you can see all the co-living spaces, community garden, and sort of a string of community shared spaces through a generous circulation core. A lot of that you can see here in the ground floor as well. So yeah, that's just the breakdown of the spaces. This is a view internally, just looking at sort of through that central core where you've got the cafe leading out into the shared garden. Each floor essentially was its own little bubble, so made up of a family apartment, 2 supporting studios, and an accessible apartment. And again, in blue, you can see on the shared areas, the balcony is sort of, I guess, a circulation space as much as it is sort of social space, and there's visual links between each floor. I'm going to skip over this as well, but essentially there's a lot of principles that I was trying to play out in the floor plan. This is the typical floor plan, and I'd say sort of the most important part of this was getting the balance of each of the different apartment types right. Because the idea of it being a bubble, I wanted to make sure that the family apartment essentially was the hub in orange. So it had a very generous sized kitchen, living dining space for the other apartments to enjoy as well. And then you've got the supporting studio being a subsidized space with a smaller kitchenette to sort of encourage those people to leave their apartments and help out within the community. Here you can just see, again, sort of a breakdown of all the different typologies and how they mix between each other. And then just quickly flicking through each typology. So family apartment, like I explained, you've got a really generous sized entertaining space. It's got areas for working from home, so integrated into the bay windows, sort of at the north. It doubles up as working from home space. And here we've got the family kitchen. This is the supporting studio. It's quite a small space, so it was quite important to make sure that it was doing a lot. And it's kind of divided so that you've got sort of private space towards the top, which is hidden by the WC area, which also doubles up with a living room, and then the kitchenette towards the balcony. And that's how it works here. And then this is the accessible apartment, so it's just a one bed, but generously sized, so it's accessible for wheelchairs. Just the environmental principles, so it was trying to do quite a lot of different things: passive ventilation, really thick walls towards the north, trying to maximize the daylight with large glazing apertures towards the south, and then also collecting rainwater and solar panels, as well as a solar farm on the top. And that's just looking between the north and the south section. And that's me.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, really good project. And yes, I think certainly in the certain areas of London that need re-looking at in from many aspects, and not just the accommodation. So yes, over to the panel. Any initial thoughts, comments?
Congratulations. It's really refreshing to see. I actually have a friend who's moving into this, or she has moved in with an elderly person who's actually an architect as well. So they get to mutually benefit, and I'm really kind of envious to kind of have this intergenerational connection. So I just wondered, like, why isn't every building, new build apartment required to have this type of program? I think it would be absolutely. And how have you thought about issues of privacy? I'm kind of thinking about the family as a sort of hub, and other people potentially being there quite a lot.
Yeah, that's a good point. I suppose the way I designed it was to ensure that every apartment was functioning within itself, so people had, I suppose, the choice be as autonomous as they wanted to be. So yeah, there's no, I suppose it depends what rules they decide on themselves, if it's every Wednesday or Thursday that people come around or whatever it is. Each apartment should function by itself as well. But yeah, it's I'm jealous of people that can do it too.
Yeah, really, really great project, and thanks for presenting. Yeah, I think what I've really enjoyed about all these projects actually is they all in their own ways speak to a lot of the key challenges that we're facing, right? So we've got a massive aging demographic issue. No one's really planning for that. So yeah, well done for being engaged. Really liked the way you presented it as well, the graphic style. Thought that was really strong and clear. So very nicely done. Yeah, just wondering if this sort of interest has stayed with you and if you pursued it further. And have you heard of groups like Healing Justice London, for example, who are doing like some interesting work in this space?
I haven't heard of them, so I have to note down. I'll speak to you after. But I suppose aging populations has always sort of been the thing that I've specifically been interested in with architecture. It's what I did my part 1 on, like to do with dementia actually. I don't really know where it's going to take me further forward. It's not what I'm working on practice at the moment. But yeah, I suppose in the future I might get an opportunity to work on something to do with it.
Any comments from the audience?
Anybody from the floor like to ask a question or make a comment on the presentation? Yes, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi. I am a mature student, but my current job is in care work. And I was just talking to my dad the other day about how traditionally in Greece you have like one floor that's for the grandparents and another floor that's for the parents, and it's only kind of more recently that people don't really live like that. So I thought this was like really, really exciting, especially because I go to a lot of people who do live alone, because that's kind of the point of the job. And my heart always really breaks for them, and I hear people go, oh, you know, it's really awful that we shut away people in like care homes. And honestly, like I was thinking to myself, kind of panicking, like, oh, are the options, you know, living by yourself or care homes? Because I don't like the sound of either of those options, honestly. I'd rather be in a care home, at least be surrounded by people. So for me, at least, just kind of seeing these spaces and then comparing them to what you've come up with just seems really appealing.
Yeah, thank you. I think, like you talk about sort of precedents where people used to live almost vertically. I think that's actually a lot of where the inspiration came from for this as well. My grandma grew up on a farm in Germany, and it was very much like that you had the grandparents living at the ground floor, and then you've got the family, and then you've got sort of different ages on these different levels of the farm. And I suppose we can't have farms in the middle of London, but we can, I guess, create different ways that we can do apartments and have community housing that brings people from different generations together in a similar way.
That's great. Thank you.
One more question.
One more question at the back
down
there.
here from Jason. 1 second.
Yeah, excellent presentation again. So thank you very much, Rachel. I just find it quite interesting, just building on the lady's comments here, with it being a multi-generational and whether, you know, you've got those generations that can actually come together and create a different financial model whereby it's not just a 20, 25-year mortgage. It's something that could just keep on going and going and going and allow them to actually own their own place over a longer period of investment time. So I just wondered if that's something that you've maybe considered in developing this.
I suppose to be honest, I think the finances of it are really interesting, and I think there's a lot of different ways you can do it. The way I was almost imagining that this project would be that it would almost be owned by the charity HomeShare, and as a charity they would be, I guess, renting or allowing people to rent from them, giving them the control of who is paired up with who, and I suppose it would give people the opportunities to move apartments if they're a young person and have a family, or their children move out and they want to go into the accessible apartment. So I suppose in a model like that, it's a bit flexible, but I'm sure there's other ways of doing it as well.
One last comment. It's a fantastic presentation, Rachel. Just taking this in a different context, I was thinking maybe when international students come to towns like Nottingham and they're removed of their families and they're looking for, I know the first time I left home and went to the US, I ended up being paired with a woman who had a spare room, and we bonded very quickly. I know primarily because I was missing home and I needed that motherly figure. And I feel like there is opportunity for university towns to create such opportunities for not just local students, but also international students who've come so far away and going to spend many years in this country. So that's something for Nottingham to consider as well, in a different dimension. A great project, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, no, great idea to add to it as well. Yeah, thanks.